This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Miniature painting is hard. But what if the reason you're not improving isn't because of you, but is actually a massive conspiracy meant to keep you in the dark and prevent you from progressing as a miniature painter, hobbyist, artist, or wherever you see yourself going in this wonderful world of miniature painting? The truth is, though, that I just have knowledge that is so basic, no one has probably ever told you it before. So before you put on your tinfoil hat, let's talk about the basic tricks you need for miniature painting. While putting paintbrush to paint and paintbrush to model might seem like an easy task, there's actually a lot more going into it than you might expect. First, in order to help the paint flow off your brush smoothly, you actually want a small amount of water in your brush. If you don't know about this trick or are curious about other must-know beginner tips and tricks, then you should check out this video here. But it doesn't matter how perfect your point is, the detail of your brush, or the sculpt of your model. Without this next trick, messing up is just a matter of time. It is very important for you to load the correct amount of paint on your brush. If you load too much paint, it will be difficult to control and probably won't go where you want it. To get the perfect amount of paint on my brush, I usually do a rolling and pulling motion in my paint, and if need be, I repeat this motion off to the side on the wet palette or on my hand. No matter what, focus more pressure on the tip of your brush to sculpt that perfect point, and pull along your surface to remove excess paint. You will know you have the correct amount of paint in your brush when it returns to that perfect pointed shape. But before you put that paintbrush on your model, there is one mistake you must watch out for. We've talked about wetting your brush, creating the perfect point. What else can go wrong before we put brush to model? Well, up on the ferrule or handle of your brush, laying in weight might be a hidden danger. Droplets of water. These sneaky little buggers have a tendency to drip down the handle and ferrule of your brush and into the belly of your brush, flooding the model at the most inconvenient of times. To overcome this, I usually dab my paintbrush handle off on my hand. Or if you are just adding more water to the brush, only dip in the hairs of the brush, not up to the handle.
Hey, sorry to interrupt your video, but I wanted to take a second and talk to you about Squarespace. I started making tinfoil hats, and Squarespace has everything I need to create an online presence or business in a single platform. I've uploaded all of the documents that I've uncovered using one of their high-quality customizable galleries. I can sell my tinfoil hats using their online commerce features, and I can even offer tinfoil hat merch with Squarespace's print on demand. If I wanted, I can even link the website to my social media. If anything happens to me and you want to create your own custom website, check out squarespace.com to start a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/lyla.mev and use code lyla.mev for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
I don't know where any of this is coming from, but I'll give Squarespace a look.
It can be really hard to know where to start when you're doing your miniature painting. What should your base color be, and how do you decide it? Personally, I always start with the midtones first. Then I paint up my highlights and shadows. The more layers you apply, the more likely you are to mess up your model. By applying your midtone and then shadows and highlights separately, I can create as few layers as possible. The only time I don't start with the midtones is if the majority of that area is going to be in either highlight or shadow. If I know an area is going to be mostly shadow, it doesn't make sense for me to base the whole thing in midtones and then work up to my shadows. Instead, it would be smarter to just paint the whole thing in shadow and then layer up those midtones individually. Basically, start with whatever color the majority of your element is going to be. which is usually the midtones. Having trouble with your paint drying on your wet palette more quickly than you think it should? Then make sure that you are wetting the back of your paper before you put it onto your wet palette. I like to run my paper under a bit of hot water to help open the pores of the paper, thus allowing moisture to better permeate our paper and keep the paint working for longer. This wet paper will also adhere to our wet palette better, again preventing it from drying out quickly. If need be, I also weigh down the corners of my wet palette paper with pennies to keep better contact between the paper and the sponge. What can happen at the corners is since there is airflow on two sides, those corners tend to be the first areas that begin to dry. So putting those pennies down helps secure that paper to the sponge. As a bit of a side note, if you ever notice that only half of your wet palette is drying more quickly than the other, make sure that your table is level. If you find that there is uneven texture on your model, or you're having a difficult time getting a smooth, clean edge, it may be that you're not applying your paint with the ideal brush strokes. While repeated short strokes have their place in miniature painting, they should be used very consciously. Instead, we want to apply smooth layers of paint one by one using long strokes placed right next to each other. The ragged edges one gets from doing multiple smaller strokes makes layering and glazing more difficult, as well as making your model look unnecessarily sloppy. If you want to do shorter brush strokes, then I recommend watching this video here where I talk about stippling. This last one is a quick one, but oh so important. If you're having problems with brush control, it might be that you're not painting with a stable grip. This could be getting a paint handle with a little arm, like mine has, resting your elbows or wrists on the table, or perhaps resting your wrists against each other. If you don't have a stable base, then nothing else really matters. So while this tip is incredibly boring, it is the foundation for everything else. Alright, that's it from me. If you want to see even more basic beginner tips, then you should check out this video here. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.